Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about movie crap. This is my weekly movie news show where I talk about movie news, trailers, and articles that I want to talk about, or basically just like, movie crap. First up, so Disney's Gigantic has been shelved or just straight up canceled. That was going to be Disney's version of Jack and the Beanstalk. It was going to be a little different, as the giant would be a girl. This was supposed to come out on Thanksgiving 2020, so it's a little surprising. They have canceled other stuff. Newt, which I think was Pixar maybe or something, that was canceled outright, and it does happen. It is just a little shocking because you don't actually expect that normally, especially one that I think, I was a little surprised because it's probably the one fairy tale Disney hasn't done, and since, Rapunzel sort of worked out for him and the Snow Queen, you'd think that this would work out also, but apparently it didn't. They just felt it hit a creative wall and it wasn't working, so it is not going to happen. Apparently they will put another original movie in that slot, which I really hope they do, because I am worried that too many of the big animated studios are kind of getting a little too into sequels, or at least that seems to be the future that we're headed towards. So I really hope they pick an original film to fill that slot, and don't just put a sequel. I don't know what sequel, but I just hope it's not a sequel. The trailer for Hey Arnold, the Jungle movie came out during New York Comic Con this past weekend. It is going to be the movie where Arnold finds his parents. I quite like all the stuff I've seen from this. It honestly feels very naturally Hey Arnold to me. It doesn't feel like I'm seeing a reboot necessarily. Sometimes the voices throw me a little, but like not enough that I really complain about it. I've kind of just accepted that this is Hey Arnold, and as of right now it seems to be going pretty good. I personally like the Hey Arnold trailer. We'll see, how it actually is when the movie comes out, but as of right now I think it has a good flow to it, though it's a little weird, like the whole group is going to the jungle and stuff, but I kind of feel like it wouldn't really be Hey Arnold without all the various characters as well as Arnold, so I think it works. Obviously the big news of this week is the Star Wars The Last Jedi trailer came out on Monday, and tickets are now on sale. Don't worry, I have a ticket. It is an awesome trailer. It looks visually amazing, particularly the uses of red. I like all the kind of things that are revealed in it. I love how visually it pops. I like seeing the porgs. I'm pro porg, I guess. It seems very exciting. I am a little worried how much this will echo Empire Strikes Back, as each of the new ones going to echo the original trilogy. I don't really want all of the films to echo the original trilogy of this newer trilogy or sequel trilogy. I think that's a little lame if they're doing that. I noticed things with Luke and Dagobah and things like that, but all the space battles look amazing. I like all the scenes I've seen of it. I'm a little curious why it so heavily features only characters we've seen from Force Awakens, and not the newer characters that we've seen hyped up, other than the porgs obviously. I'm wondering, like, maybe they're not as important, although I think that probably connects better that we follow the characters from Force Awakens, so part of me is like complaining, another part of me is like, well, that's naturally how it goes. But I thought it was a really cool trailer. I've liked all the trailers of The Last Jedi so far, and this one doesn't disappoint. I'm wondering if they shot this digitally, because it feels more digital than the previous ones. Not in a shitty prequel way, but definitely in a different way. I still like it, but it felt a little digitally to me, but I loved how cinematic it was and how just eye-popping it was, and particularly how they used planet that like sort of bleeds red when you hit the white sand. I think is a really cool concept, so I'm very excited. It just looks just like another awesome chapter of Star Wars. So, and that ending where it's like, is Kylo Ren going to be training Rey, and Kylo Ren I think is probably going to end up being the most interesting character of these new films, because he has like the biggest sort of arc, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes. It's also interesting since the whole idea of this trilogy was one was going to be for Han, one was going to be for Luke, and the final one was going to be about Leia. How they do that in the third one and how that kind of will work in this one and all that, especially with Mark Hamill. It's cool seeing Mark Hamill. I love seeing Mark Hamill in anything, but I particularly love finally seeing him as Luke. Also, a really cool Star Wars The Last Jedi poster came out right before the trailer did, so check that out. And if you're wondering who The Last Jedi is, Rian Johnson revealed that one as well. The title for the Teen Titans Go movie came out. It's called Teen Titans Go to the Movies, which is better than Teen Titans Go the movie, but really only by the fact that they have two and the movie is pluralized. So, which I actually sort of like this title, I'm not gonna lie. I think I was like, oh, that's cute. Is it gonna be them like going to Hollywood and having movie parodies and stuff? I'm kind of hoping it's like Chipmunks go to the movies. I hope it's like Chipmunks go to the movies. I would be down with that. It's probably not, though. It's probably just going to be horrible, but I can dream. Also, Will Arnett and Kristen Bell are involved somehow. I'm assuming Will Arnett might play Batman, maybe? I don't know. I can make stuff up, who cares? So in addition to The Last Jedi, the day before, on Sunday morning of all days for some reason, the Justice League trailer, I think there's a Comic-Con panel, right? I'm assuming. Like a Sunday morning, I'm not really like that excited by any of these trailers. This one looked, I guess, better. I'm kind of just like, sure guys. I think the one like a year ago or something, there's been a lot of these things. It's really hard to give a shit at this point. It's like, I'm gonna see it. I kind of would like for it to work out for them. I'm still like not clear why this villain is so interesting. Whatever his name, he's like not a major villain. He's kind of like a side villain that they made into a bigger villain because there's supposed to be a second Justice League movie and that was canceled and so forth. I still am like, you know, we all know Superman's coming back and stuff. I hope this movie works out. I didn't think it was that spectacular of a trailer. It was just kind of like, all right, fine. But it's like, how many of these has there been? Like, I'm not as hyped up for this. Ben Affleck looks fine, and I like Ezra Miller and Gal Gadot, and Jason Momoa is in it, and Cyborg and all that. I'm just curious how this is all going to fit together with Joss Whedon and all that. One of the first kind of major trailers released at New York Comic Con was the trailer for Pacific Rim 2, which does look fun. It looks like dumb, silly fun. I think the biggest difference between Pacific Rim 1 and 2, other than obviously it's not directed by Del Toro, is that it's very bright and colorful. It's not the kind of Pacific Rim that was darker and murkier, but still had a giant robot beating a monster with an oil tanker and stuff like that, which I think was fun. This one doesn't have the same cinematic sense to it. It feels more like a silly, dumb, big blockbuster movie that's released in March or something, but I think that naturally works for it. This might, I think this honestly probably will do better than the original Pacific Rim, and it feels a lot more commercial. It feels like if the marketing department of the studio was giving more control of Pacific Rim. And I've heard the guy who directed this, who made Spartacus, which I never saw, is really good at making kind of like dumb, junky TV, and honestly, if it was a dumb, junky Pacific Rim sequel, I would be fine with that. It's kind of interesting to go from Pacific Rim, which was an auteur director trying to make a big blockbuster, till the franchise just becoming a dumb, stupid blockbuster. The Bride of Frankenstein reboot or remake or whatever it was, which was going to be directed by Bill Condon, who also directed Gods of Monsters, which of course is about James Whale, who directed the original Bride of Frankenstein, has been pulled from Universal's schedule, which is another major hiccup for the Dark Universe, which seems to sort of be falling apart. Even though The Mummy actually didn't do as bad overseas as it did here, it kind of worked out for them on that end, just not as successfully as they planned. Part of the problem is that even though Javier Bardem sounds like he signed on, Angelina Jolie has not, and it doesn't sound like it was like official, and there wasn't enough major cast members to really go ahead with this thing, even though they're already building sets for it. Apparently they are interested in maybe getting Gal Gadot to play the Bride of Frankenstein. I still think Angelina Jolie would have been cool. I know she doesn't really act as much. This would have been kind of an interesting role for her to take. I don't really want there to be a Bride of Frankenstein. I don't care if Bill Condon is directing it. It's a shitty idea. I think he'll probably get the fun of James Whale's original, but like Gods and Monsters is a cool movie, but it's not like a James Whale movie, and Bill Condon has made a lot of crap. Like, he's just not a director I'm really that thrilled with, so I'm kind of fine with this like not happening. So Mark Ruffalo revealed this week that there's sort of a semi-Hulk trilogy happening, starting with Thor Ragnarok. Obviously, you know that the Hulk can't have his own solo movie because life is unfair, and Universal also owns the movie rights, or the solo movie rights to Hulk, but they're allowed to use Hulk in other Marvel movies. So basically, Kevin Feige, according to Mark Ruffalo at least, took Mark Ruffalo aside and said, what would you like to happen if there was a solo Hulk movie? And he went this, and this, and that. That's honestly what he said in the interview thing or whatever. And Kevin Feige was like, cool, we'll spread that out among various movies. Apparently it starts with Thor Ragnarok, goes from Avengers 3, which I guess would be Infinity War, and Avengers 4, which will be called something, and yeah, that's gonna be like, he's gonna have this interesting arc through them. I guess. Although, hasn't he like changed throughout each of these movies? I still think it would be cool if Mark Ruffalo's Hulk got his own movie, because I think Mark Ruffalo is up to it. But until then, I guess this is what we get. It's interesting how they build arcs of characters like kind of separate from the movies, and that still seems to work corporately. Marvel's always interesting how they manage to get all this storytelling to work, because it seems like a rather hard process. But I'm interested to see what they're going to do with the Hulk. It's kind of interesting that they would let this cat out of the bag, although it's coming from Mark Ruffalo and not Feige, so maybe, you know, it's not really an official announcement, but we'll see if this turns out to be true when we eventually see more of this supposed Hulk trilogy. Apparently there's still a Gambit movie that might be made, apparently, and the latest director, who I don't think is officially signed but looks like he might sign, is going to be Gore Verbinski, who recently directed A Cure for Wellness this year and directed those Pirates movies, the first three, and then also Lone Ranger and stuff. He's an interesting choice. He definitely has a very beautiful vision in terms of how his movies look, and I think it'd be cool for him to do a Gambit movie. Let's see if it actually happens, since this thing has been in development for so long and it's gone through so many different directors. But he's at least one where I'm like, that could be cool on its own, just Gore Verbinski doing a superhero movie. We'll see, and we'll see if this actually happens. Apparently Channing Tatum is still actually attached, believe it or not. There's been a trailer for Steven Soderbergh's ambitious project called Mosaic, which is going to release an app, and you can watch it any way you want, in any order you want, and then they're going to release more of a linear specials of it on HBO. It's really ambitious and really interesting, and I'm a big Soderbergh fan, and I like that he's like expanding the visual storytelling medium, so I'm very interested. I'll probably download it, unless it already happened and I missed it, but I would like to download it at some point, and it's really interesting, the whole idea of it. So that's out, so you should check that out. Another big announcement at New York Comic Con was Batman the Animated Series is coming to Blu-ray next year. I like what they did with Batman the Mask of the Phantasm and the kind of touch-ups they did with that film, and I think they did a good job with that Blu-ray, so I'm excited for Batman the Animated Series on Blu-ray. I think that sounds cool. In two pieces of Stallone news. One is that Sylvester Stallone will be directing Creed 2. Ryan Coogler presumably is too busy to direct Creed 2, so Stallone is going to do it instead. That makes me a little worried, because I think what worked about Creed is that it was kind of a different director's viewpoint, other than Stallone, who's directed a lot of Rocky movies. But I guess Ryan Coogler was too busy and they didn't want to get anyone else, and I know apparently Stallone tried to get overly involved in Creed and they wouldn't let him, so we'll see. Apparently Ivan Drago is most likely coming back. I don't know if that's gonna be good. Kind of feels like a shitty Rocky sequel. I hope it's more focused on Creed than Rocky, but we'll see what happens with that. Michael B. Jordan, to my understanding, is still involved. There was a story about basically there was used to be a kind of rivalry between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, and the rivalry would go between like who had the bigger knife in a movie, who was the bigger box office draw, who had the bigger muscles, all that stuff. And Schwarzenegger told the story about how he got Stallone to do Stop or My Mom Will Shoot by actually saying he was really interested in the script, and then having Stallone come up from under him and steal it, and then eventually be in Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, which I think is really funny. I like that that's how that movie happened, is Schwarzenegger totally trolling Sylvester Stallone. Is absolutely hilarious. The long in development and probably will never happen Bill and Ted movie got a title, which is called Bill and Ted Face the Music, and it's about them trying to make the revolutionary song that will change the world. Maybe it will happen. Keanu Reeves is still talking about it, so I don't know. It would be a cool Netflix movie. Let's see if that happens. And finally, Martin Scorsese wrote a guest column in Hollywood Reporter talking about how real cinephiles don't really look at Rotten Tomatoes, and actually hailing Darren Aronofsky's mother and saying a lot of interesting things about movies, so you should check that out if you're into Martin Scorsese. And it's an interesting read, and he's a pretty good writer, I think, and it's interesting. I wasn't sure he'd be down with Mother, but it's cool that he is. So in past weeks I haven't really talked about any of the sexual assault allegations against Devin Faraci, Harry Knowles, the Screen Junkies guy, which I haven't happened after last week's episode, and now Harvey Weinstein. And I tried to cover those, but I never felt like I was able to really capture my feelings and about those. I really hate that these people have put this into film culture, and I know this is not unique to those people, and I know that it will not end with those people, unfortunately. And there's a lot of people who get away with that, not just in film culture, but in life in general. But this is a movie show, and it's mainly because these allegations keep happening and people keep being complacent and letting them happen, particularly with the Alamo Drafthouse with Devin Faraci and Harry Knowles, and it's something I just can't really stand for personally. I am very much against that kind of behavior. If you do witness anything like that, please report it to who it needs to be reported to, whether it be the authorities or if it's at your profession, you know, the HR department or whomever. With the Harvey Weinstein allegations, which I don't really want to say allegations, but I guess we have to legally or something, it just seems to add a dark cloud to that whole Miramax Weinstein Company history that certainly I don't think I really liked him as much as I did in the 90s, when all I knew about him was he produced all the movies I liked and such. And certainly we're having a lot of, I guess, revisiting what that film history was, since a lot of that was obviously tainted by him taking advantage of his Hollywood power to sexually assault women and such. I just find it, the whole thing with all these people, to be just insanely disappointing. But I also think, you know, when you hear of someone doing something like this, people always say, oh, well, they were a good producer, but they also did this. They were a good critic, but they also did this. They're a good whatever, but they also did this. And I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy movies that Harvey Weinstein produced, reviews that Devin Faraci wrote, things that Harry Knowles did back in his day. But I will say this, I think all of them were very much about showing different kinds of movies and getting people into different kinds of movies and spreading the art form and changing what the art form could do. And clearly in their personal lives, they did not really believe that, and they were kind of huge bullshit artists. And I don't think we're really trying to get that done. I think that was just sort of a big PR stunt, and I think they succeeded in, particularly Harry Knowles and Harvey Weinstein, in getting me to see different kinds of films. I don't think they honestly really believed that. I think they believed in their own power, and using their patriarchal role to kind of hurt people is not how to spread film and change film and help film culture. Is a way to pretty much do what Hollywood executives and people of power in movies and people of power pretty much in everywhere have done ever since the beginning of time. So these guys started off as being kind of these original kind of iconoclasts in a certain regard, and ended up just being all of the same. And that's in some ways just how life works, but I find it rather typical and incredibly disappointing, and I don't really want to be associated with any of them. If I ever praised any of those guys, it was before I knew anything about that. I would never personally put up with something like that, and I think film culture should be better than to do things like that, and I think we should be able to move on and hopefully at least reduce some of these things, although it's probably childish to believe that will probably go away forever, and naive that it will go away forever. Unfortunately, please just support women and support women who do speak up, and it is a very hard and brave thing to do, especially when unconsensual sex or unconsensual touching or something does happen. That's often very unfortunate. So I'm sorry I did not cover this before. I wasn't exactly sure the right way to say it, but I apologize for not bringing it up sooner. Basically condemning all those people and condemning them as people who, if I used to consider them someone of integrity in any regard, that integrity has completely been destroyed by their actions, and from what I've learned, the kind of people that they are, and I find that incredibly disappointing and disheartening and absolutely disgusting. So that was Movie Crap. Since the last episode of Movie Crap, I've had reviews of Blade Runner 2049 and the Simpsons episode of Treehouse of Horror, the original first Treehouse of Horror. I also did a Lost film file on the Lost First Sound horror film, which is called The Terror. Also, Knockforce re-released the first Knockforce EP on its YouTube channel. All the other music is going to come to the YouTube channel eventually, but as of right now, just the first EP has been released on there, so check that out. Obviously, there was a Pizza Party podcast, and yeah. Also, this guy, I got my Tom Servo thing. Isn't that cool? Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. If you'd like to talk about any of the various movie news, stories, trailers, or anything, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to.